Hi friends, my name is Pumpkaamy and I'm going to be teaching you how to cope with and prepare for your first rotation, or if you've had rotation before, don't worry, I'm also going to be putting a little bit in for you about which decks you should be preparing now, ready for roughly a month's time. So right now it's March 2025. If you're watching this in the future, rotation may have been and gone, but this video may still be helpful in the future. So let's get into it. I'm going to teach you what a rotation is for the Pokemon trading card game, and then I'm going to be giving my advice on what you should do with your cards and which decks you should be playing. Catch you in just a moment. Here we go. How to prepare for rotation, March 2025. What is rotation? So basically in the Pokemon trading card game, to keep things fair and balanced, every year a certain set of cards will rotate out of standard tournament legality. This time round, anything of letter F in a rotation block will be going away, including cards like this Radiant Greninja and a lot of V-Star cards. This year, April 11th is rotation day. So that will be the day when you can no longer use any cards A, B, C, D, E, or F in the bottom left corner of the cards, which you can see on this Greninja. How do I know what rotates? So as I was saying, at the bottom left corner of your cards, there'll be a little letter. This is the indication of which rotation block that card is in. If there is no letter at the bottom of the card, it is so old. Your cards are so old that they don't have a rotation mark. This means they're definitely not standard legal. All that means is that you cannot play them in sanctioned Pokemon TCG standard events. Okay? Now, there is an exception to the rule. It's frustrating and complicated, I know, I'm sorry, but older cards which have reprints, which are still in rotation after April 11th, are still legal. So, if I have a Countergain, and it's new, it's from the Scarlet Violet era, it's got a H on the bottom left there. Now I still can play my Sun and Moon Countergain, even though it doesn't have a letter, it doesn't have a rotation mark. That's okay. The effect of the card is the same. Even if it's not, let's go even further back. Rare Candy has printings where the text is different. I am still allowed to use the old Rare Candies as long as I'm using it as if the effect is the modern card. Now, I would always recommend taking a more modern Rare Candy with you to an event, because if a judge or your opponent would like to see that you do know what the new Rare Candy does, then they will need proof of that. Obviously, if someone calls a judge, the judge can also just come and explain that. It's totally fine. You're not going to get in any trouble, I promise, but you are allowed to use your older cards as long as the name of the card is the correct name. So this is called Countergain. Even if the text on the middle of the card is different, it's okay. You just have to treat it as if it is the most modern printing text. So the name is the important thing there. What should I do with my old cards? Well, I've got a couple of suggestions. 1, keep them. We've just seen that cards can come back. Countergain was not in rotation for a while there. It came back round. So if you had some old Sun and Moon ones in the cupboard, in an Elite Trainer box or something, store them nicely, put a little silica packet in there to make sure they don't warp, you're golden. So maybe think about what's going to come back. Cards that aren't going to come back are usually specific to an era. Let's say, oh, Tower of Darkness won't come back because Rapid and Single Strike Pokemon aren't going to be a mechanic in the future. That was specific to the Sword and Shield DLC expansion. So we don't need to worry about those coming back. It's very unlikely. So I could probably safely say I'm not gonna keep my Tower of Darkness because that's a waste of space, but Yeah, okay, like counter gains, ultra balls, rare candies, switches, escape ropes, things like these cards where they have generic effects that could come back one day, where they've had multiple printings in the past, are probably wise to keep around. Keep them in a nice box in the cupboard, keep them safe with a silica packet, and I think you're good to go. Number 2, you can sell them or trade them in. There are lots of local gaming stores and services that allow you to sell your cards or trade them in. Or if you're feeling lovely, you could donate them to a local store. I'm sure that their casual players or their juniors bracket would be super appreciative of some cards, regardless if they're in rotation or not. So if you just want to save some space, you can trade them in, sell them, or donate them to a local game store. If you'd like to see where your most local game store is, you can check on the Pokemon website on the events locator. I'll put a link in the description in case you need it. Number 3, you can put them to use in some retro decks. A lot of people like to keep together their favorite decks from various eras so that they can go back and play them again with friends. Let's say you really, really loved playing, what's rotating? Let's say you absolutely love God of War EX in its current form. Although the God of War EX itself isn't going to be rotating away, the Curliers are, and there's lots of lovely other bits that we're going to miss from the deck that really makes it shine in this format. Why not leave the deck together? Encourage your friends to do the same, and you can revisit that another time and just play for fun. Or you can put GLC decks together, as long as they're not EX or rulebooks Pokemon, of course. Or just keep them together for some expanded play. Some stores still do support expanded, and sometimes if you ask your local organizer, hey, can we play a particular format as a treat, I'm sure they'll oblige. So there's 3 good suggestions of what to do with your old cards. Now the nice thing about this rotation is that a lot of the yellow bordered cards are going to be rotating, which makes it super easy for you to sort through your cards. There are a few exceptions, as we spoke about, but again, it does make sorting a little bit easier this time round since we changed to the silver border. But Amy, what should I build now? With rotation just around a month away, what's good to be playing right now at events? So I'm not wasting my money on cards that are going to rotate. So I'm not wasting my time building a deck I'm going to have to change loads. Here are some of my suggestions of what decks you should be playing right now, which have minimal rotated cards coming out of them, especially in the Pokemon department, which tends to be the more expensive cards. So we've got decks like Dragapult EX, Charizard EX, a mixture of the both. Dragazard been doing very well. Terrapagos EX, Raging Bolt EX, Archaladon EX, and Golden Goat EX are all great choices. Of course, there will be lots of other picks, but these are just some that I've highlighted. I'm going to just take a pause here and show you exactly how I got to these conclusions and how you can then use your knowledge and your own expertise in the future to reach your own conclusions so you don't have to rely on anyone telling you. All right, trainers, I'm going to need you to do it again. I'm sorry, I'll keep banging on about it till the end of time, but you need to go to limitlesstcg.com/tournaments/JP. That stands for Japan. You can, of course, reach this from the main page as well, the home page. If you click tournaments, then you can click city leagues. That means that it is the Japanese tournaments. So you can go tournaments and tab over to city leagues. Then I can click on a tournament and I can see all of the decks that have top 16'd that event. Now, city leagues are the Japanese equivalent of a league cup. So theoretically, any of these decks could do really great in a Western League Cup. Now, I must stress that the Japanese format is exclusively best of one. So some of these decks may not translate over very well to our best of 3 format. But it's a really great framework. And not only that, I can click here and I can see the whole deck list and all of the Pokemon that are in there already. It even tells you which cards are unreleased in the West at the moment. But of course, Lily Sclefairy will also be legal as of rotation day because Journey Together will be out by then and it becomes legal on the same day as rotation. So I know that I could build this deck and I can get most of it ready already. Now this one's a new deck that we don't really have in our Western format right now. It's kind of this cool Ogre Pond box, making use of those Area Zero Underdepths and the Jewel Seeker ability on Noctowl. But for all, you know, for all purposes, I could get this entirely ready, apart from one Lily's Clefairy, which I might even be able to pick up at my local pre-release. Don't forget to have a look if any pre-releases are going on in your area. They're super fun, and you get such good value for money, and you'll be able to get your cards early and start practicing. Let's head back and look at some others. Of course, we know this is going to be the Ends Zoroark deck. Again, you could get other things ready, but actually, because the most of it is Ends cards, we're going to need to hop to a pre-release. So let's not worry about that. I'm going to quickly talk about some of the new draw engines that we're going to have going into this new meta. Now, of course, the Noctowl is going to be a big one, but also oh, crumbs. It didn't let me click. Of course, we're going to be a little bit more reliant on our supporters, but these are all supporters and items that we're using quite thoroughly right now anyway. So again, I wouldn't worry too much about that. Our Chaladon has a bit of a change because a lot of people are using this Hops Dubwool and Wooloo combo, but also some are using the Dunsparce engine as well as a really solid draw engine. If you have a look up of the newer Dunsparce engine, that will probably help as well. There's also this really funky kind of block deck with Farigiraf EX and Cornerstone Mask Ogerpon EX and Milotic EX. So again, looking like a really nice solid deck there. Just trying to prevent your opponent from attacking you using whichever Pokemon is most appropriate. Again, I can get most of that ready right now. In fact, I actually think I own all of those cards. I think there's very few things. No, nothing is unreleased. I could build this right now, and for, you know, roughly $48. That includes the energy, so it wouldn't really be $48. That would be a bit wild. But there are lots of things that we can consider from the Japanese meta. We can look through all the different events. You can look again at those deck lists. It's really a handy way of predicting our meta to an extent. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not going to work miracles. It's not going to be the most efficient thing on the block for showing us how our meta will kind of wrap up in the end, but it's a nice little preview. This is that Dunsparce I was talking about. I think it's going to be an interesting adaptation of a draw engine for us. Once during your turn, you can draw 3 cards. If you do this, you can shuffle the Pokemon back in, and then you can play it again and keep going each turn. So I think that's an interesting one to be stocking up on. And of course, then we'll get the Dunsparce EX, which again is unreleased, and a funky little Toedscool. I hope this has been helpful and a way to kind of, again, keep an eye on the meta in Japan and use it to forecast your decision making when preparing for rotation. And we're back. I hope that was really useful, and hopefully you can use the Japanese meta to inform your choices when the next rotation comes around swinging. Of course, some rotations are more impactful than others. This is arguably one of the most impactful rotation blocks that I've ever known while I've been playing competitively. So I appreciate that it's a big and scary one, but I promise you, if you use your knowledge and inform your decisions, then you'll be golden, and it'll be super easy to arrange your cards, sort them out, sell them, keep them, whatever you decide. This will hopefully make it a lot easier and less daunting. But Amy, how do I practice when the old cards are still legal, but in a very short span of time, it's going to be changing? Well, actually, for digital play on Pokemon TCG Live, we're going to go into rotation early on March 27th. So this very month that I'm recording this will give players an official platform to test the new standard format. So everything's going to rotate early on Pokemon Trading Card Game Live. Of course, you can also grab some friends who have also got their decks ready for rotation and play in person or on webcam or anything like that, of course. But if, like me, your friends are very busy people, then of course you can play on TCG Live after March 27th. And it'll also allow you to then experiment and deck build just a weekish before official rotation takes place in person. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been really helpful and a little snippet into how rotation works and what to expect in the future. I promise you it's not as daunting as you may think, especially for newer players. I appreciate this is a little bit complicated, but when you get into the swing of things, you'll start to just know which cards are in and out and shake it all about, and which ones are likely to come back, which ones have older printings, which ones don't. Of course, if you're newer to the Pokemon trading card game, you just need to keep an eye on the bottom of those cards. I appreciate it's a bit of a slug, but it is honestly one of the best things that's kept our game well weighted and just not too broken at any given time. It's a really fantastic system, and having the foresight to know exactly when our cards won't be playable anymore allows us to sell them in advance and get good prices for them, to be able to organize our cards and our life around that. And honestly, I just think it's a fantastic system. It keeps our game healthy, and I hope that this has been superbly helpful for everyone. If you have any other suggestions or anything I may have missed, make sure you put your advice for rotation down in the comments, and I hope you all have a fantastic rotation day on the 11th of April. Bye for now.